Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The Mississippi summer air hit Callum Vance like a physical blow as he stepped through the sliding doors of Jackson International Airport. Even after 6 years in the Marines, serving through the scorching Syrian desert, nothing quite compared to the thick, wet blanket of southern humidity. His combat uniform, still carrying the dust of his last deployment, clung to his skin as sweat began forming along his spine that a young family hurried past, their laughter echoing through the terminal. The father carried a sleeping toddler against his shoulder, and for a moment, Callum's mind flashed back to holding June that same way. She'd been just a toddler when he'd first deployed, her tiny fingers clutching his uniform as she begged him not to go. Now she was 8, growing up in video calls and letters that could never quite bridge the distance. "You need a ride, sir?" A taxi driver's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Callum adjusted the duffel bag on his shoulder, the weight familiar after years of carrying military gear. "Yeah, western suburbs." He gave the address, his heart rate picking up as he spoke the familiar numbers. "Home. Finally home," in the back of the taxi. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over Sarah's number. He wanted to surprise her and June, had imagined their faces lighting up when he walked through the door. But something in his gut, the same instinct that had kept him alive through 3 tours, urged caution. The driver navigated through familiar streets, past landmarks that held 6 years of memories. The park where he'd taught June to ride a bike during his last leave. The grocery store where Sarah always insisted on checking every expiration date, a habit that used to drive him crazy, but now seemed endearing. The church where they'd gotten married, its white steeple rising above the trees like a beacon. "Military?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror at Callum's uniform. "Marines. Gunnery Sergeant." "Thank you for your service, sir." The driver's eyes crinkled with genuine respect. "Must be good to be home." "Yeah." Callum's voice was rough with emotion he wouldn't show. "Real good." The taxi turned onto a street, and Callum's trained eyes immediately began cataloging details. The grass was overgrown, reaching halfway up the mailbox. Sarah's flower beds, once her pride and joy, had been overtaken by weeds. The American flag he'd hung before his last deployment was missing from its holder. Something cold settled in his stomach. Wrong. It all felt wrong that he paid the driver, adding a generous tip, and stood in the driveway, studying the house. The curtains were drawn tight against the afternoon sun, unusual for Sarah, who loved natural light. No toys scattered across the yard, strange for a house with an 8-year-old. The neighbor's cat, one June used to feed treats to, watched him warily from under a bush. His key still worked in the lock, but the sound it made was too loud in the quiet. The door swung open with a creak that echoed through emptiness. Combat instincts kicked in immediately. His muscles tensed, and his senses sharpened as he moved through the entrance. The house wasn't just wrong. It was empty. The living room, where their comfortable old couch should have been, where June's toy chest belonged, where Sarah's reading chair always sat by the window, nothing remained but rectangular impressions in the carpet. "Sarah?" His voice bounced off bare walls. "June?" He moved through the house with military precision, clearing rooms like he was back in Syria. Kitchen empty except for built-in appliances. Dining room vacant where their family table should have been. Their bedroom stripped down to an exposed mattress, springs visible through torn fabric, in the master bathroom. A few forgotten items told their own story. A bottle of Sarah's perfume, nearly empty. A hair tie on the counter. His own razor, untouched since his last leave. In the medicine cabinet, his prescriptions for combat-related injuries stood in a neat row, but Sarah's things were gone. June's room hit him hardest. The walls were still pink, but the butterfly decals he'd helped her put up were gone, leaving faint outlines like ghosts. The collection of stuffed animals that always migrated from bed to floor had vanished. Her bookshelf, where he'd read her stories through video chat, stood empty. Even the glow-in-the-dark stars they'd stuck to her ceiling had been peeled away, leaving small patches of damaged paint back in the kitchen. A single piece of paper lay on the counter, held down by a coffee mug he'd brought back from his first deployment. His hands didn't shake as he picked up the note. They never shook Not even in combat, but something cold and hard formed in his chest as he read the words, "You were gone too long. I deserve more. Don't look for me." Callum stood absolutely still, the paper crumpling in his grip. Years of military training had taught him to assess situations quickly, to maintain control under pressure. He forced himself to think methodically, like he was planning a mission. First step, assess the damage. He pulled out his phone, accessed his banking app. The screen loaded slowly, each moment stretching like pulled wire. Account after account showed the same balance: $0. Their joint savings, his military pay account, even his emergency fund, all emptied. Second step, gather intelligence. He walked the house again, this time looking for clues rather than family. In their bedroom closet, he found a single wire hanger, twisted into a shape June would have used for a magic wand. In the kitchen drawer, a forgotten receipt showed a purchase from 3 weeks ago. Normal groceries, normal life. No sign this was coming. Third step, document everything. He took photos of each empty room, each bank statement. The Marine in him knew the importance of evidence, of building a case. The husband in him wanted to punch through walls. In the garage, his tools were gone. The workbench where he'd taught June to build a birdhouse during his last leave was bare. But there, tucked behind an empty shelf, he found something that made his jaw clench: a small notebook in Sarah's handwriting. Dates, account numbers, withdrawal limits. This wasn't a sudden decision. This was calculated, planned. The rage came slowly, building like a storm on the horizon. It wasn't the explosive anger of his younger days, but something colder, more focused. Combat had taught him to channel emotion into action, to use it as fuel rather than let it consume him. He pulled out his phone again, scrolling through contacts until he found his brother's number. Garrett picked up on the third ring. "Cal, you back stateside? Where's my daughter, Garrett?" His voice was military flat, controlled at a pause on the other end. When Garrett spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. "She's here with me. Has been for a while now. You need to come over, brother. There's a lot we need to talk about. I'll be there in 20. Callum ended the call, his mind already shifting gears. June was safe. That was the primary objective secured. Everything else was secondary. Tactical problems to be solved. He took one last look around the empty house, committing every detail to memory. The bare walls, the hollow rooms, the betrayal hanging in the air like poison gas. This moment would fuel what came next. He stepped out into the Mississippi sun, locking the door behind him. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, oblivious to the war brewing in their midst. But Callum knew better than anyone, sometimes the deadliest battles were fought on home soil, and this was just the beginning. Garrett's house sat on the quieter side of town, a modest firefighter's home with crisp white trim and an American flag snapping in the evening breeze. As Callum pulled his rental car into the driveway, his trained eyes caught details that told their own story. A pink bicycle propped against the garage, training wheels still attached. A collection of chalk drawings decorating the sidewalk. Signs of childhood, signs of June. The porch light flickered on as he approached, casting warm yellow light across well-worn wooden steps. Before he could reach for the doorbell, the door flew open with a bang that would have made him reach for a weapon in Syria. But this wasn't a war zone. This was home. "Daddy." June launched herself through the doorway, a blur of brown pigtails and purple clothes. Her momentum nearly knocked him back, but years of combat training had given him an unshakable stance. He caught her, lifting her high like he used to, drinking in the sight of her face that she'd changed so much. Her front teeth had come in, slightly too big for her mouth, just like his had been at her age. Her cheeks had lost their baby roundness, and her eyes, her eyes looked older somehow. 6 years of watching his daughter grow up through a screen hadn't prepared him for this moment. "Hey, sunshine." His voice was rough with emotion as he held her close. She still used the same strawberry shampoo, the scent hitting him with a wave of memories. Bath times and bedtime stories, moments stolen between deployments. "I missed you so much." June's arms tightened around his neck, her words tumbling out in an excited rush. "Uncle Garrett lets me have ice cream sometimes, but not as much as you did. And he doesn't know how to do braids right. He tries, but they always come out crooked. And he bought me a bike, see? She pointed toward the garage. But I haven't learned to ride it without the training wheels yet, because... Her voice trailed off, the excitement dimming. Because Mama said she'd teach me when she came back. Callum met his brother's eyes over June's head. Garrett stood in the doorway, his firefighter's build solid and reassuring, but his expression grim. The brothers had always been able to read each other, a skill honed by years of having each other's backs. Right now, Garrett's face said this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. "Why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" June bugged. Garrett suggested, his voice gentle but firm. "Your daddy and I need to talk about some grown-up stuff." June's face fell slightly, but she nodded. Growing up in a military family had taught her about grown-up stuff too early. Callum set her down, watching as she disappeared into the house. The sound of her footsteps on the stairs echoed in his chest like distant artillery. Garrett led him to the kitchen, pulling 2 beers from the fridge. The room showed signs of a bachelor adjusting to sudden parenthood. Dishes drying in the rack, a child's homework spread across the table, a calendar on the wall with June's dance recital marked in red. They sat at the table, the bottles sweating in the evening heat. Callum didn't touch his. "How long?" Garrett took a long pull from his beer before answering, condensation dripping down the bottle like tears. "She left about 4 months ago. Dropped June off here one morning, said she needed a few days to sort some things out. Never came back." The cold rage in Callum's chest crystallized further. "Tell me everything." "His name is Royce Adler." Garrett's jaw tightened as he spoke the name, like it left a bad taste in his mouth. "Real piece of work. Has a record fraud mostly. Con artist type who preys on people with money and trust to spare." "How'd they meet?" "Some charity event she was organizing. One of those fancy galas where people pretend to care about causes while showing off their money." Garrett's fingers tapped against his beer bottle, a nervous habit from childhood. "Started spending a lot of time together while you were deployed. Said he was interested in supporting her fundraising efforts." "How long was it going on?" "From what I could piece together, about 8 months before she left. She got real secretive, started making excuses about where she was going. Changed her passwords, got a second phone." Garrett's expression darkened. "I tried to talk to her. Cal reminded her about you, about June, about everything you were sacrificing over there. She just..." He shook his head. "It was like talking to a stranger. The money..." Callum's voice was military flat. "She planned it carefully. Real careful. Transferred everything out slowly, so it wouldn't raise flags. Used her position as your wife to access all the accounts. By the time anyone realized what was happening, she and Adler were in the wind." Garrett leaned forward, his voice dropping. "But that's not the worst part." "What do you mean?" "Adler, he's got a pattern. Done this before. Finds women with access to money, makes them fall for him, helps them drain accounts dry. Usually dumps them once the cash is gone." Garrett's hands clenched into fists. "But this time he stuck around. They're still together. And June?" The name came out like a prayer. Garrett's expression crumpled. "She left her here with a backpack of clothes and her favorite stuffed animal. That ratty old bear you sent her from your first deployment? Said she'd be back in a few days. June kept asking when her mama was coming home. After 2 weeks of nothing, I filed for emergency temporary custody. Judge granted it, given the circumstances." The bottle cracked in Callum's grip. A thin line of blood welled up where the glass had nicked his palm, but he barely felt it. The pain was nothing compared to the rage building in his chest. "Did she ever try to contact June?" "One phone call, about a month ago. June was so excited to hear from her. But..." Garrett's voice caught. "But what?" "Sarah just asked about money. Wanted to know if you'd sent any support payments yet. When I told her you were still deployed, she hung up. June was..." He shook his head, the memory clearly painful. "It was rough. Real rough. Kid cried herself to sleep that night." A small voice from the doorway made them both turn. "Did Mama leave because she doesn't love me anymore?" June stood there, her small fingers twisting the hem of her shirt, eyes bright with unshed tears. She looked so small, so vulnerable, that for a moment Callum was back in Syria, watching children pick through rubble of their bombed-out homes. But this was worse. This was his own child, wounded by someone who should have protected her. Callum was out of his chair in an instant, knocking it over in his haste to reach her. He knelt in front of his daughter, taking her small hands in his. They felt like bird bones, fragile things he had to protect. "Listen to me, sunshine." He kept his voice steady, the same voice he'd used to calm young Marines in their first firefight. "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices. Really bad choices. But that's not because of anything you did. You understand? This isn't your fault." June's lower lip trembled. "But if I was better now?" Callum's voice was firm but gentle. "You are perfect exactly as you are. Your mama, she made her choices. But you've got me now, and Uncle Garrett, and we're not going anywhere. Ever." June threw herself into his arms, her small body shaking with sobs. Callum held her, feeling each tear like a bullet impact. His military-trained eyes met Garrett's over her head. His brother nodded slightly, understanding the unspoken message. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Later, after June had cried herself to sleep in her room upstairs, Callum and Garrett sat on the back porch. The summer night was thick with humidity and the sound of crickets. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance, and somewhere a car alarm wailed briefly before falling silent. "I've got copies of everything," Garrett said quietly, passing over a thick manila envelope. "Bank statements, withdrawal records, Adler's criminal history. Found what I could on public records." Callum took the envelope but didn't open it. "Tell me about him." "Everything you know." Royce Adler, 42 years old. 3 convictions for fraud, but nothing stuck. Always managed to get off with probation. Smooth talker, knows how to work people. Specializes in investment scams and high-stakes gambling. Garrett's voice hardened. "Got a thing for married women with access to money. Uses charity events to meet them. Plays the wealthy philanthropist. Real bottom feeder. Current location? Atlanta, last I heard. Running some kind of high-stakes poker game out of a fancy casino. Living large on other people's money." Garrett studied his brother's face in the darkness. "What's your play here, Cal?" Callum stared out into the darkness, his expression carved from stone. "First, I'm going to find them. Then I'm going to make them pay. Every penny they stole, every tear June has cried, they're going to regret all of it." "You're talking about revenge?" "I'm talking about justice." Callum's voice was cold enough to freeze hell. "They didn't just steal money, Garrett. They stole my daughter's mother. Her trust. Her sense of security. You can't put a price on that." Garrett was quiet for a long moment, the porch swing creaking beneath him. "You know I've got your back, whatever you need. But be careful, brother. Revenge can eat a man alive. This isn't about revenge." Callum stood, his silhouette dark against the night sky. In the distance, heat lightning flickered, promising a storm. "This is about making things right. And I know exactly where to start. Just remember what you're really fighting for." Garrett nodded toward the upstairs window where June slept. "She needs her father more than she needs an avenger." Callum's expression softened slightly as he looked up at his daughter's window. "Everything I do from here on out is for her. Everything." The brothers sat in silence for a while longer, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Garrett spoke again. "You staying here tonight?" "Yeah. Want to be here when June wakes up." Callum's voice roughened. "Missed too many mornings already." But they both knew sleep wouldn't come easy. Not with the weight of betrayal pressing down like a combat pack. Not with the taste of vengeance bitter on his tongue tomorrow. The real work would begin. But tonight, Callum would stand guard over what remained of his family, protecting them from shadows both real and remembered. The neon sign of Lou's Bar cast a sickly red glow over the cracked pavement of downtown Jackson. Even at this late hour, the summer heat lingered like a hangover, making the air thick and oppressive. Music leaked from the building's weathered walls, some country song about broken hearts and betrayal that made Callum's jaw tighten inside. Cigarette smoke hung in layers, creating a haze that reminded him of morning fog in the Syrian desert. The bar smelled like spilled beer, cheap whiskey, and desperation. Callum moved through the crowd like a ghost, his military bearing making people step aside unconsciously. Even in civilian clothes, he carried himself like a Marine. Alert, dangerous, ready. Benny Graves sat at the far end of the bar, exactly where Callum knew he'd be. 6 years hadn't changed him much. Same scarred knuckles wrapped around a whiskey glass, same vigilant eyes scanning the room. same coiled tension in his shoulders that marked him as a fellow warrior. A long scar ran from his left ear to his collar, a souvenir from their time in Fallujah that Callum remembered all too well. Benny spotted him immediately, a slight smile tugging at his mouth. "Well, if it ain't the ghost of Fallujah himself." He raised his glass in greeting, the amber liquid catching the dim bar light. "Heard you were back stateside?" Callum slid onto the bar stool next to him, noting how Benny had positioned himself with clear sight lines to both exits. Old habits died hard. News travels fast. In certain circles, Benny signaled the bartender for another whiskey. His eyes, sharp despite the alcohol, studied Callum's face. "Though I'm guessing this ain't a social call. You still got those connections you used to brag about?" "Depends who's asking and why." Benny's expression turned serious, the easy smile falling away like a dropped mask. "I need information on someone. Royce Adler, con artist, probably operating out of Atlanta now." Recognition flickered in Benny's eyes. The name rings a bell. He took a slow sip of his drink, ice cubes clinking like shell casings. "What's your interest?" "He took something that belongs to me." Understanding dawned in Benny's eyes. They'd served together long enough to read between the lines, to hear the controlled rage beneath the calm words. "Heard about what happened with Sarah. Rough business, brother. Can you help or not?" Benny studied him for a long moment, the way he used to study terrain before a mission. Finally, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Remember Fallujah? That night when everything went sideways?" Callum nodded slightly. How could he forget? Their unit ambushed, communications down, half their team wounded. It was Callum who'd gotten them out, carried Benny 3 miles through hostile territory with a bullet in his own leg. "You saved my ass that night. Twice." Benny's hand unconsciously touched the scar on his neck. "I owe you." He glanced around the bar before continuing. Adler's made quite a name for himself in certain circles. High-stakes poker, investment scams, the usual con artist playbook. But he stepped up his game lately. How so? Last I heard, he was running games out of Atlanta. Got himself a fancy penthouse in Buckhead, expensive suits, high-roller lifestyle. Word is he's got a regular table at the Golden Crown Casino. Real exclusive crowd. Bought with my money, Callum said quietly, the words carrying the weight of promised violence. That's not all. Benny's voice dropped lower. He's got protection. Pays off the right people to look the other way. Casino security, local cops, maybe even some judges. Man's got his bases covered. I don't care who he's paying. I want everything. Where he lives, where he works, his routines, his weaknesses. Everything. Benny nodded slowly, recognition glinting in his eyes. It was the same tone Callum had used when planning combat missions. Cold, precise, lethal. Might take a few days to get all that. But there's something else you should know. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Adler's got a reputation with women. Likes them young, vulnerable. Uses them in his cons, then drops them when they're no longer useful. The glass in Callum's hand creaked dangerously. Like Sarah? Maybe. Or maybe she was different. Word is they're still together, living large on whatever they managed to squeeze out of their marks. Benny's eyes were sympathetic but direct. He's never kept one around this long before. Usually dumps them once the money's gone. You saying she's special to him? I'm saying she might be part of his operation now. A partner, not just another mark. Benny watched his friend's reaction carefully. What exactly are you planning, Cal? I'm going to find him. Then I'm going to tear his world apart piece by piece. Everything he built with my money, every connection he's made, every scheme he's running, I'm going to destroy it all. And Sarah, Callum's expression hardened into something that would have made enemy combatants step back. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Benny was quiet for a moment, studying his old friend's face in the bar's dim light. The man before him wasn't the same soldier he'd known in combat. This was someone harder, colder, shaped by betrayal into something dangerous. Finally, he nodded. Give me 3 days. I'll get you everything you need to know about Adler's operation in Atlanta. Sources reliable. You know me, brother. I don't deal in maybes. You'll get names, dates, locations, everything you need to plan this right. And this stays between us? As far as I'm concerned, this conversation never happened. Benny finished his whiskey and stood, dropping cash on the bar. But Cal, he paused, one hand on his friend's shoulder. Whatever you're planning, make it count. People like Adler, they don't learn from half measures. Callum watched his old friend disappear into the crowd, his mind already racing with possibilities. The Marine in him wanted to strike hard and fast, but experience had taught him the value of patience. Adler had spent months planning his betrayal. Now Callum would take his time planning something far worse. Justice that a country song played on the jukebox, something about revenge served cold. Callum pulled out his phone, checking the time. June would be in bed by now, safe at Garrett's house. His daughter's face flashed in his mind. Her tears, her confusion, her broken trust. The cold rage in his chest burned a little hotter that he thought about the manila envelope Garrett had given him, filled with bank statements and criminal records. Thought about June's room, stripped of her mother's presence. Thought about the calculated way Sarah had planned it all, turning his military service against him while he was overseas fighting for his country. Royce Adler thought he'd won. He thought he could steal another man's wife, another man's money, destroy a child's world, and walk away unscathed. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Callum stepped out into the humid night, his path clear. In 3 days, he'd have everything he needed to begin. And then? Then the real hunt would begin. The neon lights of Lou's bar reflected in the puddles at his feet, turning the water blood red. Somewhere in Atlanta, Royce Adler was probably sleeping soundly, feeling secure in his stolen luxury. Soon, very soon, that security would shatter, and Callum would be there to watch it fall. Thunder rumbled in the distance as he walked to his car, nature's own drums of war. The storm was coming, and this time, Callum Vance would be the one bringing it. The Golden Crown Casino rose like a glass and steel mountain from Atlanta's Buckhead district, its windows reflecting the setting sun in sheets of molten gold. Callum adjusted his custom-tailored suit bought with the last of his combat pay and studied his target's domain. 3 weeks of surveillance had taught him Royce Adler's habits. Now it was time to turn that knowledge into weapons. Mr. Blake? A valet approached with a practiced smile. Welcome back, sir. Callum handed over the keys to his rental car, playing the role of James Blake, a successful investment banker and high-stakes poker enthusiast. The identity had cost him, but Benny's connections had made it bulletproof. Evening, Tommy. Callum returned the smile, his southern charm cranked up to match his fake background. Busy night? Yes, sir. Mr. Adler's hosting another private game upstairs. Callum's jaw tightened at the name, but his expression remained pleasant. Maybe I'll stop by, try my luck. The casino's interior hit him with a wall of controlled climate and carefully engineered atmosphere lights designed to keep players awake, music pitched to encourage risk-taking, air perfumed with success and desperation in equal measure. James! Nyla Holloway's voice cut through the casino noise. She approached from the high roller lounge, all legs and calculated grace in her cocktail dress. I was hoping you'd be here tonight. Miss me? Callum gave her his practice grin, the one he'd been perfecting for weeks. That Nyla's laugh was musical but held an edge of steel. As the casino's VIP hostess, she was the perfect source of intelligence. Connected, observant, and most importantly, tired of Royce Adler's arrogance. The private game starts in an hour, she said, linking her arm through his. Walk with me? They moved through the casino floor, past slot machines and card tables where fortunes rose and fell with each turn of a card. To anyone watching, they looked like any other casino relationship, attractive hostess courting a wealthy player. Nobody would guess she was helping him destroy one of the house's biggest whales. Adler's in rare form tonight, Nyla murmured as they reached the bar. Lost big at the track yesterday. Looking to make it back. How big? $250,000. Maybe more. She signaled the bartender. He's been drinking since 6, getting sloppy. The kind of sloppy that makes a man take risks. Callum absorbed this, adding it to his mental file. His usual crew here? Most of them. Nyla's voice dropped lower. Including that wife of his. The one you asked about? Callum's hand tightened on his glass, but his voice remained steady. Sarah's here, hanging on his arm like designer jewelry. Nyla's expression showed what she thought of that. But something's off. They were arguing earlier in the VIP lounge. Couldn't hear much, but he wasn't happy about some business deal gone wrong. Perfect. The pieces were falling into place. Tell me about the private game, Callum prompted, playing with his drink. 5 players, 100,000 minimum buy-in. No limit hold'em. Nyla's red lips curved. Want me to get you a seat? You know me? Callum gave her his best careless rich boy smile. Always ready to play. That's what I like about you, James. She stood, smoothing her dress. You're not afraid to take risks. If she only knew, an hour later, Callum sat at the private poker table, studying his opponents over his cards. The room was pure luxury. Crystal chandeliers, leather chairs, private waitstaff. The kind of place where millions changed hands nightly, and there he was, Royce Adler, looking exactly like his photos. Expensive suit, manicured hands, the kind of confidence that came from spending other people's money. Next to him sat Sarah, draped in diamonds that Callum's stolen money had probably bought. She didn't recognize him. The beard, the changed accent, the designer clothes, they made him a different man. But seeing her there, laughing at Adler's jokes, made his combat-trained muscles ache for action. Not yet. Patience. Raise. Adler tossed chips into the pot, his movements slightly unsteady. 50,000. Call. Callum matched the bet, noting how Adler's eyes narrowed. He'd been deliberately losing small pots all night, building an image of a rich amateur. Now it was time to spring the trap. You're new to our little group, Adler said, trying to sound casual. What did you say you did again? Investment banking. Callum kept his voice relaxed. Private wealth management, mostly. Really? Adler leaned forward, alcohol making him sloppy. We should talk business sometime. I've got some opportunities that might interest you. I'd like that. Callum watched Sarah stiffen slightly at her husband's words. Interesting. Trouble in paradise. The hand played out exactly as planned. Callum's full house crushed Adler's flush, taking 150,000 from the man in one go. Lucky hand. Adler's smile didn't reach his eyes. Make your own luck. That's what I always say. Callum stacked his chips carefully. Another round? By midnight, he'd taken 500,000 from Adler and planted the seeds of his destruction. A carefully dropped comment about offshore accounts. A mentioned interest in alternative investments. The kind of bait a con man couldn't resist. We should definitely do business, Adler said as they prepared to leave, his words slurring slightly. Come by my office tomorrow. We'll talk opportunities. Looking forward to it. Callum shook his hand, noting how Sarah watched the exchange with worried eyes later. In the parking garage, Nyla caught up with him. You did a number on him tonight. Just getting started. Callum handed her an envelope. For the information about his other games. The illegal ones. Be careful. She glanced around the garage. Adler's got friends in low places. The kind of friends who make problems disappear. I'm counting on it. Back in his hotel room, Callum reviewed his notes. The groundwork was laid. Adler had taken the bait, hungry to recover his losses. Now it was time for Phase 2. That he opened his laptop, accessing the files Benny had provided. Evidence of Adler's previous scams, carefully documented. Records of bribes paid to local officials. And most importantly, proof of his illegal gambling operations. Tomorrow, an anonymous tip would reach the Atlanta Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. The day after, certain evidence would find its way to the FBI's white-collar division. By the end of the week, Royce Adler's carefully constructed world would start crumbling. Callum pulled out his phone, checking the time. In Jackson, June would be getting ready for bed. He called her earlier, listened to her talk about school and dance class, promised he'd be home soon. Soon, sunshine, he whispered to the empty room. Daddy's just got to take care of some business first. He turned back to his plans, the casino's lights, painting patterns on the hotel room wall. The hunt was on, and the predator was becoming the prey. The morning headlines screamed across Atlanta's news networks. Prominent casino figure under investigation. Callum watched the coverage from his hotel room, a cup of black coffee cooling on the desk beside him. 3 days of carefully leaked evidence had done their work. Now it was time for the final act. His phone buzzed a text from Nyla. He's losing it. Been in his office all morning, screaming at anyone who comes near. Perfect. A desperate man made mistakes. Callum checked his equipment one last time. The flash drive containing the final evidence was secure in his pocket. The wire he wore would record everything. His backup piece was strapped to his ankle, though he hoped he wouldn't need it. This wasn't about killing. It was about destruction. His phone rang. Royce Adler's number. Blake here. James. Adler's voice carried forced cheerfulness. About that investment opportunity we discussed. Could you come by my penthouse this evening? Say 8. Problems with the casino. Callum kept his tone casual. Minor regulatory issues. Nothing to worry about. Adler laughed, but it sounded hollow. Bring that offshore account information you mentioned. I think we could do some interesting business. Looking forward to it. The line went dead. Callum smiled. The prey was walking right into the trap. The Buckhead Heights Tower stretched into the Atlanta sky like a silver needle. Callum stepped into the private elevator that would take him to Adler's penthouse, noting the security cameras. The guard at the desk had waved him through on Adler's orders. Sloppy security for a man under investigation. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse foyer. The place screamed money. Marble floors, contemporary art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. All bought with stolen funds. James! Adler emerged from what looked like a home office, drink in hand despite the early hour. Come in, come in. Drink. Bourbon if you have it. Callum followed him into the living room, cataloging exits and sight lines from habit. Man after my own heart. Adler poured from a crystal decanter. Sarah, honey, come meet James. She emerged from another room, and Callum's jaw tightened. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Their eyes met, and for a moment he saw something flicker across her face, not recognition, but unease. Charmed. Her voice was cool, controlled. She'd learned to play the society wife well. Likewise, Callum accepted his drink, noting how her hand trembled slightly as she took her own glass. Now then, Adler settled into an expensive leather chair. About those offshore accounts, actually, Callum set his untouched drink down. I wanted to discuss something else. Like how you're stealing from your own casino to cover gambling debts. The color drained from Adler's face. What? Or maybe we should talk about how you've been bribing police officials. Or running illegal high-stakes games. Or, Callum's voice hardened, how you helped this woman steal her husband's military pay while he was serving overseas? Sarah's glass shattered on the marble floor. Cal. Hello, Sarah. He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on Adler, who was reaching for his desk drawer. I wouldn't. Callum's voice was combat cold. Your gun's been removed, along with anything else useful in this apartment. Who are you? Adler tried to stand, but his legs seemed to give out. The man whose life you stole. Callum moved with military precision, closing the distance between them. The father whose daughter cries herself to sleep, wondering why her mother abandoned her. Security. Adler lunged for his phone. They're busy with the FBI agents in the lobby. Callum caught him by the collar. 6 years of combat training, making it effortless. You really should vet your employees better. Nyla's been helping me for weeks. You can't. Adler's protest ended in a grunt as Callum slammed him against the wall. I can, and I will. Each word was punctuated with controlled force. Not enough to kill, but enough to hurt. Every cent you stole, every life you've ruined, it ends today. Callum, please. Sarah's voice shook. We can explain. Explain? He didn't look at her. Explain how you left our 8-year-old daughter with a backpack and never looked back? Explain how you drained accounts I filled serving my country. Or explain how you're just as guilty as him. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Now he did turn to her, and she stepped back from his expression. I'm not here for explanations. I'm here for justice. Adler tried to swing at him. Callum caught the punch easily, twisting until the con man dropped to his knees. The FBI has everything. Callum's voice was conversational now. Bank records, proof of bribes, evidence of your illegal gambling operation. Even some interesting offshore accounts in your name accounts I created, filled with what looks like stolen casino money. That's a lie. Adler gasped. Yes, it is, but it's a very, very convincing one. Convincing enough for the federal prosecutors who are probably reading the evidence right now. As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. You're finished, Royce. The casino's investigating the missing money. The FBI's investigating the fraud. Your precious contacts in the police department are running scared. By morning, everyone will know you for what you are, a thief and a con man. I'll tell them everything, Adler threatened. About this setup. Go ahead. Tell them how a decorated Marine tracked you down and exposed your crimes. Tell them how you stole his money, abandoned his child. See who believes you. The sirens were closer now. Callum released Adler, who crumpled to the floor. Callum, Sarah stepped forward, tears in her eyes. What about me? Are you sending me to jail too? No. He straightened his suit. You get to live with what you've done. Every morning, you'll wake up knowing you chose this man over your own daughter. That's punishment enough. Red and blue lights painted the penthouse walls. Down below, FBI vehicles were surrounding the building. One more thing, Callum pulled out his phone, showing them a video June at her dance recital, performing without a mother in the audience. This is what you threw away. Remember that. The elevator dinged. Heavy footsteps approached law enforcement. By the sound of them, Mr. Adler, a commanding voice called out. FBI, we have a warrant. They'll be looking for evidence of financial crimes, Callum said calmly. They'll find plenty, and when they start digging, they'll find more. Your whole house of cards is about to collapse. You bastard, Adler spat. No. Callum stood over him as FBI agents burst into the penthouse. I'm just a father making things right. He stepped back as agents swarmed the room, weapons drawn. Adler was already screaming about conspiracies, about setups, about lies. Nobody seemed to be listening. Sarah, Adler called out as they cuffed him. Tell them this is all a lie. But she stood frozen, staring at the ruins of her choices. Callum moved toward the door, pausing only once. June asked about you last week. Wanted to know if her mother ever loved her. I didn't have an answer. Do you? Sarah's sob followed him to the elevator, but he didn't look back. His phone buzzed a text from Benny. It's done. All accounts frozen. He's got nothing left. In the lobby, he passed FBI agents and police officers rushing upward. Nobody paid attention to another well-dressed man leaving the building. Just another night in Buckhead outside. The Atlanta night was alive with sirens and flashing lights. News vans were already arriving, drawn by the FBI presence at such an exclusive address. Tomorrow's headlines would tell the story of Royce Adler's downfall. A story of fraud, corruption, and justice, but not the whole story. Never the whole story. Callum walked to his car, the weight of vengeance lifting from his shoulders. He had a plane to catch, a daughter to return to, a life to rebuild. His phone buzzed again. Garrett this time just saw the news. You okay? It's done, he texted back. Coming home tomorrow. June's got a dance competition this weekend. She's been practicing like crazy. Callum smiled for the first time in weeks. Tell her daddy's going to be there. Front row. He drove away from Buckhead Heights, leaving behind the sound of sirens and the ruins of two lives. They'd chosen their path. Now they could walk it alone. The Mississippi morning painted Callum's rebuilt life in shades of gold. He stood in his new kitchen, watching June practice her dance routine in the backyard through the window. She moved with the grace of a born performer, her face set in concentration as she perfected each step. Looking good, sunshine, he called through the open window. Remember to spot your turns. June beamed at him, her smile bright enough to chase away the lingering shadows of the past year. At 9 years old, she was growing into herself, healing from old wounds. Dance had become her refuge, her way of expressing what words couldn't capture. The doorbell rang, an unexpected intrusion into their Sunday morning routine. Keep practicing, he told June. Competition's only 2 weeks away. The security system he'd installed after Atlanta showed a familiar figure on the porch. For a moment, he thought he was seeing things. But no, the camera didn't lie. Sarah Point, 1 year of silence. And now here, she stood on his doorstep. But she wasn't alone. In her arms, she held a bundle wrapped in a pale blue blanket. That Callum's combat instincts kicked in, assessing the situation with tactical precision. June was in the backyard, out of sight. Good. He opened the door, letting the screen door remain closed between them. You got nerve showing up here? His voice was arctic cold. Sarah looked different. Gone were the designer clothes and carefully styled hair. She wore jeans and a tired expression, dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights. "Hello, Callum." Her voice wavered slightly. "Can we talk?" "Nothing to talk about." He made no move to open the screen door. The bundle in her arms stirred, and a thin cry pierced the morning air. Sarah bounced slightly, shushing the infant with practiced movements. "Please," she said, "just hear me out. I need your help." Like June needed her mother. Sarah flinched but pressed on. Things with Royce, they fell apart after the arrest. He had money hidden away, accounts the FBI didn't find. But he wouldn't share. Said I wasn't worth the risk anymore. Imagine that. A con man being dishonest. "The baby." She pulled back the blanket, revealing a small face with dark hair. "He's yours, Callum. From that last leave, before everything happened." Callum's laugh held no humor. "Really? That's the play you're going with? I can prove it. I have the birth certificate, medical records. Save it." He cut her off. "I had a vasectomy after my second tour. Doctor said the combat injuries made it necessary. You'd know that if you'd bothered to read any of my medical files before you cleaned out our accounts." Color drained from Sarah's face. I didn't know that." "Of course not. You were too busy planning your exit strategy." He leaned against the doorframe, studying her with the same cold calculation he'd used on enemies in combat. "So, what's the real story? Royce's baby? Some other mark you tried to con?" "I need money," she whispered. "Alimony. Child support. Anything. I will never give you a cent. Then I'll take you to court." Her chin lifted, a ghost of her old confidence surfacing. "I'm still legally your wife. I have rights. Go ahead." Callum smiled, and Sarah took a step back. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "File the paperwork. Let's tell a judge how you abandoned our daughter. How you drained my combat pay while I was serving overseas. How you helped a convicted felon run his schemes. You can't prove." "I can prove everything." He pulled out his phone, showing her documents on the screen. "Bank transfers, hotel receipts, witness statements. I've got a paper trail a mile long showing exactly what you did." The baby started crying again, louder this time. Sarah looked desperate. "Please, Cal. I've got nothing left. No money, no place to stay. The baby is not my problem." His voice was final. "Neither are you, Daddy." June's voice came from behind him. I heard voices. Sarah's eyes lit up. "June! Baby, it's Mama." But June stepped back, moving closer to Callum. Her voice was small but steady. "You left us?" I had to go away for a while, but I'm back now." Sarah tried to smile. "Don't you want to meet your baby brother?" "He's not her brother," Callum said flatly. "And you're not welcome here." "June, please." Sarah's voice cracked. "Talk to your father. Tell him we need help." June looked up at Callum, then back at her mother. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of a child forced to grow up too fast. "You were gone too long." Sarah recoiled as if struck, hearing her own words thrown back at her. The baby's cries grew louder, matching the desperation in her eyes. "I'll go to the media," she threatened. "Tell them how you set Royce up, how you destroyed him. Go ahead." Callum's voice was calm. "Tell them how a decorated Marine tracked down the people who stole his money and abandoned his child. See who they believe." He started to close the door, but paused. "One more thing. Divorce papers are being filed tomorrow. My lawyer will find you. You can't do this." Sarah's voice rose. "I'm their mother." "No." June's voice was clear and strong. "A mother wouldn't leave." The door closed with finality, cutting off Sarah's protests. Through the security camera, Callum watched her stand there for a long moment, the baby still crying in her arms. Finally, she turned and walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "You okay, sunshine?" Callum knelt beside June. She nodded, her eyes too old for her young face. "Can we practice my dance some more?" "Of course." He followed her back to the yard, where morning sun had burned away the last traces of dawn mist. "Show me that new turn sequence." As June resumed her practice, Callum sent a quick text to his lawyer. Time to finish what he'd started in Atlanta. Cut the last ties. Make sure she could never hurt them again. The June's dance music filled the morning air, drowning out the sound of a car starting somewhere down the street. She spun and leaped, each movement precise and determined. Like her father, she'd learned to channel pain into purpose. The security system beeped once Sarah's car leaving the detection zone. Callum watched his daughter dance, her face set in concentration. They'd rebuilt their life piece by piece. No one would tear it down again, not even her mother. The Jackson County Courthouse loomed against the morning sky, its weathered stone facade a testament to decades of Mississippi justice. Callum adjusted his tie, the same one he'd worn to June's last dance recital, and felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. Today wasn't about looking impressive. Today was about ending this chapter once and for all. "Security's tight," Garrett observed, falling in a step beside him as they climbed the courthouse steps. "Press trying to get in through every entrance." "Let them try." Callum's briefcase felt heavy with purpose, each document inside carefully chosen and prepared. They'll get their story soon enough. Their lawyer, Michael Davidson, waited at the top of the steps, his silver hair catching the morning light. 20 years of military family law had given him a reputation for being ruthless when necessary. Today, that reputation would serve them well. "Mrs. Vance and her attorney arrived 10 minutes ago," Davidson reported, matching their pace as they entered the building. "They're pushing hard for the emergency support hearing." Judge Heller wasn't pleased about the rush filing. "About that judge?" Garrett asked. "She reliable?" "Marion Heller." Davidson's smile was sharp. 23 years on the bench. 3 tours in JAG Corps before that. She has a particular interest in cases involving military personnel. "Perfect." Callum's voice held the same calm he'd used in combat situations. "Everything else in place?" "DNA results came in yesterday." Davidson patted his briefcase. "Clear as day. The baby isn't yours. Lab director's ready to testify if needed, but I don't think we'll get that far." "Not that we needed a test to know that," Garrett muttered. Holding the courtroom door, 3 smelled of old wood and anxious anticipation. Sarah already sat at the plaintiff's table with her lawyer, a young woman named Rachel Torres, whose expensive suit screamed more ambition than experience. Sarah had dressed for maximum sympathy, wearing modest clothes that couldn't quite hide their department store origins. The baby, notably, wasn't present. "Where's June?" Sarah's voice carried across the room as they passed. "Safe," Callum replied without breaking stride. "Away from this?" He caught Torres whispering urgently to Sarah, probably last-minute coaching on playing the victim. But Callum had seen real victims in combat zones. He knew the difference between genuine suffering and calculated performance. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmuring. "All rise." The Honorable Judge Marion Heller presiding. Judge Heller swept into the courtroom like a storm front, her black robes emphasizing her rigid posture. She hadn't earned the nickname Steel Marion for nothing. Her eyes, sharp beneath steel-gray hair, surveyed the room as she took her seat. "Be seated," she commanded. "Ms. Torres, I understand you're seeking an emergency hearing for support payments?" Torres stood, smoothing her skirt. "Yes, Your Honor. My client seeks emergency spousal and child support. Mr. Vance has denied all assistance while Mrs. Vance struggles to care for their infant son." "Objection, Your Honor." Davidson's voice cut through the theatrics like a combat knife. "The paternity of the child in question is a matter of significant dispute. We have birth records," Torres started. "We have DNA results," Davidson countered, producing a sealed envelope. "Conducted by an independent lab, properly documented and witnessed. Dr. Marcus from Jackson Memorial's Genetics Department supervised the testing personally." Judge Heller accepted the envelope, her reading glasses making her scrutiny even more intense. She reviewed the contents with practiced efficiency, her expression unchanging except for a slight tightening around her eyes. "Ms. Torres," she addressed Sarah's lawyer, "did you review these records before filing your emergency petition?" "Your Honor, we weren't made aware." "That's a no then." Judge Heller's pen scratched across her notepad. "Mrs. Vance, you claimed this child was conceived during your husband's last leave before deployment, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." Sarah's voice wavered perfectly, hitting all the notes of a wronged woman. "In March of last year, we were trying to save our marriage." "Save it?" Garrett muttered under his breath. while she was living with Adler? Mr. Vance, the judge continued. Your response? Callum stood, military straight. Your Honor, I had a documented vasectomy in 2022 due to combat injuries sustained during my second tour. The medical records are included in that file, along with follow-up tests confirming the procedure's success. The color drained from Sarah's face. Torres frantically shuffled through her papers. Furthermore, Davidson added, rising smoothly, we have evidence that Mrs. Vance was still cohabitating with Royce Adler at the time of conception, a man currently serving time for financial fraud in Georgia's state penitentiary. These are baseless accusations. Torres protested, her composure cracking. Mr. Adler was merely a business associate. A business associate? Davidson's eyebrows rose. Then you won't object to me reading this letter? Written by Mr. Adler to Mrs. Vance just 3 months ago, from his prison cell? Sarah half rose. That's private correspondence. Please proceed, Mr. Davidson, Judge Heller instructed, her tone suggesting she was starting to see the full picture. Davidson produced the letter, the prison markings clearly visible on the envelope. My dearest Sarah, he read, I know you're angry about the money, but you have to understand why I couldn't risk moving it while under investigation. Our son deserves his inheritance, but we have to be patient. Once things cool down, I'll tell you where I hid the accounts. He looked up. It continues in that vein for several pages, becoming quite explicit about their relationship and shared criminal activities. Your Honor, Torres tried to recover. Regardless of the child's paternity, my client is still legally married to Mr. Vance and entitled to spousal support under Mississippi law. About that, Callum nodded to Davidson, who produced a thick folder stamped with federal seals. Bank records, Davidson explained, laying them before the judge, showing systematic theft of Mr. Vance's military pay and benefits while he was deployed overseas. Transfer records, investment accounts, offshore transactions, all executed by Mrs. Vance over a period of months, totaling just over $800,000. Judge Heller's expression hardened as she reviewed the documents, each page seeming to deepen her frown. Mrs. Vance, did you authorize these transfers? I had access to our joint accounts. That's not what I asked. The judge's voice could have frozen fire. Did you deliberately transfer these funds while your husband was deployed in active combat zones? Torres whispered something urgently, but Sarah was already talking, her careful victim act crumbling. You don't understand. Royce had opportunities. Investment plans. We were going to triple the money. So that's a yes. Judge Heller's pen scratched across her notepad with finality. Mr. Davidson, I assume you're filing criminal charges? The FBI is already investigating, Your Honor. These transfers cross state lines, making it a federal matter. Agent Phillips from the Financial Crimes Division is waiting outside if you'd like to speak with him. Good. The judge set down her pen like she was placing a period at the end of Sarah's freedom. Mrs. Vance, your petition for emergency support is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a temporary order freezing any remaining assets pending criminal investigation. But my baby needs formula. We'll be homeless. That child, the judge cut in, her voice sharp as a razor, has a father. One currently residing in the Georgia State Penitentiary. I suggest you seek support from him. She turned to Davidson. I assume divorce papers are forthcoming? Already filed, Your Honor, along with a petition for full custody of June Vance and a restraining order preventing Mrs. Vance from approaching either Mr. Vance or their daughter. You can't take my daughter. Sarah stood, her careful facade shattering completely. I'm her mother. I have rights. Rights? Judge Heller's voice could have cut steel. A mother who abandoned her child and stole her father's military pay while he served overseas? Sit down, Mrs. Vance, before I hold you in contempt. Mr. Davidson, proceed with your petitions. This court takes a very dim view of parents who abandon their children while defrauding military personnel. Sarah collapsed in her chair, tears falling. But Callum had seen her cry before when she wanted something, when she needed sympathy, when she was running one of her schemes. The tears meant nothing now. One more thing, Your Honor, Davidson added, producing another file. We have evidence linking Mrs. Vance to Mr. Adler's criminal enterprises in Atlanta, specifically her role in several investment frauds targeting military families. The FBI is particularly interested in this aspect. The judge's expression darkened further. Submit everything to my office. I'll forward it to the appropriate authorities. She lifted her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. Mrs. Vance, I strongly suggest you find criminal defense counsel. You're going to need it. The gavel fell with the finality of a coffin lid closing. Callum stood, gathering his documents with military precision. He didn't look at Sarah, didn't acknowledge her existence. But he heard her words, desperate and angry, as Torres tried to quiet her. Cal, please. You can't do this to me. Her voice cracked with real fear now. I'll tell them everything about how you set up Royce, how you planted evidence. Go ahead. He finally turned to her, his voice carrying the weight of earned victory. Tell them how a decorated Marine exposed the people who stole from him. Tell them how you abandoned our daughter. Tell them about the money you stole while I was dodging bullets in Syria. Tell them everything. He walked away, Garrett and Davidson flanking him like honor guards. Behind them, Sarah's sobs echoed off the courtroom's high ceiling. But they sounded hollow now, empty as the promises she'd made and broken outside. Storm clouds gathered over Jackson, promising rain. But Callum didn't mind. Sometimes you needed a storm to clear the air, to wash away the past and let something new grow in its place. Thunder rolled across the Jackson sky as Callum pushed through the courthouse doors, the humid air clinging to his skin like memories he couldn't shake. Davidson was already heading to his car, briefcase full of victory, while Garrett waited by the steps, watching the storm approach with a firefighter's practiced eye. Looks like a big one coming, Garrett observed, nodding at the darkening clouds. Might want to get June home before it hits. She's safe with Maria, Callum replied, referring to June's dance instructor. Wanted her focused on next week's competition, not this mess. Cal! Sarah's voice cut through the pre-storm quiet like broken glass. She burst out of the courthouse behind him, Torres trying unsuccessfully to hold her back. You can't leave it like this. We need to talk. Mrs. Vance, Torres called after her client. Please don't say anything else without. I don't need a lawyer to talk to my husband. Sarah shrugged off her attorney's restraining hand. Callum turned slowly, watching her descend the courthouse steps. Gone were the designer clothes from her days with Royce, replaced by a department store dress that had seen better days. Her hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp in the humid air. She looked nothing like the woman who had abandoned their daughter with a backpack and a note. Ex-husband, Garrett corrected. Soon as the papers are filed. Stay out of this. Sarah snapped at him before turning pleading eyes to Callum. Just give me 5 minutes. Please. It's already done. His voice carried the finality of a prison door closing. I have nowhere to go. She grabbed his arm as he started to turn away, her fingers trembling. The motel wants payment by tonight. The baby needs formula. I can't even buy diapers. Please, Cal. For what we used to have a family. He removed her hand from his arm with military precision. You destroyed that when you chose a con man over your daughter. I made a mistake. Her voice cracked with desperation. People make mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance. You have to forgive. I don't have to do anything. Thunder punctuated his words, closer now. Except protect my daughter from you. Our daughter. Sarah's tears mixed with the first drops of rain. June needs her mother. Every girl needs her mother. June needed her mother a year ago. Garrett stepped forward, his firefighter's build making Sarah step back. Where were you then? When she cried herself to sleep? When she begged me to tell her why she wasn't good enough to make you stay? That's not fair. I was confused. I was running cons with Royce? Callum's voice cut through her excuses. Helping him target other military families? Teaching him about deployment schedules so you could pick the perfect marks? It wasn't like that. Royce said we could help people invest their money. Like you helped yourself to my combat pay. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb, windshield wipers already fighting the increasing rain. The back door opened, and June stepped out, still wearing her dance practice clothes. Her face, so like her mother's but carrying Callum's strength, showed no emotion as she looked at Sarah. June! Sarah rushed forward, arms outstretched. Baby, please. You have to help me. Tell your father you need me. Tell him families should stay together. Stop. June's voice was quiet but firm, carrying across the rain-soaked space between them. She moved closer to Callum, taking his hand. Just stop lying. I'm not lying. I'm your mother. No. June's grip tightened on Callum's hand. A mother wouldn't leave. A mother wouldn't steal. A mother wouldn't come back just because she needs money. Sarah recoiled as if struck. You don't understand. I had to leave. Your father was always gone, serving overseas. We were alone so much. Royce promised me everything. And how did that work out? Callum's voice carried no sympathy. Royce is in prison. His money's gone. And you're standing here begging the man you betrayed. I didn't betray. You stole his money, June interrupted, her young voice steady. While he was fighting for our country. Miss Thompson taught us about that in school, about military families and sacrifice. About honor. The rain fell harder now, soaking through Sarah's thin dress. She looked small, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who had once plotted to steal everything Callum had earned. What am I supposed to do? Her voice was barely a whisper. Where am I supposed to go? That's not our problem. June's words, so adult in their finality, hung in the rain-soaked air. You were gone too long. You chose him. Now you get to live with that choice. June, please. Sarah, try one last time. I'm still your mother. Blood matters. No. June's chin lifted, showing the same determination she brought to her dance competitions. What matters is who stays. Who helps you practice at midnight before a recital. Who holds you when you're scared. Who chooses you every single day. She looked up at Callum. That's what family is. Sarah crumpled, her legs giving out as she sank to the courthouse steps. Her sobs were lost in the sound of rain hitting stone. Torres hurried forward with an umbrella, trying to shield her client, but Sarah seemed beyond noticing. Come on, sunshine. Callum guided June back to the SUV. You've got dance practice? Competition's next week. June informed her mother's huddled form, her voice carrying notes of both sadness and steel. Not that you'd care. You missed all the others. They left Sarah there, a hollow monument to choices and consequences, as the storm washed over Jackson. Through the SUV's tinted windows, Callum watched his past dissolve in the rain, while beside him his future chatted about dance steps and competition routines. 1 year later, the summer sun painted golden streaks across June's newest dance trophy, its metallic figure frozen mid-pirouette on the mantel. Callum adjusted it slightly, lining it up with the others she'd won over the past year. Each one represented another step forward, another piece of healing. Looking good, boss. Benny's voice came from the doorway. He'd driven down from Atlanta for the weekend, looking relaxed in civilian clothes. Prison time had changed Royce Adler, but it had changed Benny too. He'd gone legitimate, started a security consulting firm specializing in casino fraud prevention. Not your boss anymore. Callum handed him a beer. How's business? Growing faster than kudzu in August. Benny settled into a chair, watching June practice in the backyard through the window. Got contracts with 3 major casinos now, teaching them how to spot guys like Adler before they can set up shop. Through the window, June moved through her routine with precise grace. Her latest competition piece told a story of loss and redemption, her own story, transformed into art. Got room for a partner? Benny continued carefully. Someone with your skills, your experience. We could build something real. Thanks, but no. Callum's refusal was gentle but firm. Got everything I need right here. Heard about Sarah. Callum raised an eyebrow. She's in Miami now. Benny took a pull from his beer. Working as a waitress at some beachfront dive. The baby's with Royce's sister in Atlanta. Probably better for everyone. Good for them. That's it? No interest in none? Callum watched June execute a perfect series of turns. That chapter's closed. June came in through the back door, flushed with exertion and success. Uncle Benny! She threw her arms around him. Did you see my new routine? Ms. Maria says it might win nationals. Sure did, princess. You're getting real good. Moving like a professional out there. Dad helps me practice every day. She beamed at Callum, even when he's tired from work. He never misses a session. Callum had taken a job at a local security firm. Nothing fancy, but it kept him close to home. No more deployments. No more missing his daughter's life. The pay wasn't military grade, but it was honest work that let him be there for every recital, every competition, every moment that mattered. Speaking of practice, he said, "Don't you have that new lift sequence to work on?" June nodded, already heading back outside. "National finals next month. Watch this new move I learned." They watched her dance, her movements strong and graceful in the afternoon light. She'd grown taller over the past year, stronger in body and spirit. The wounds of abandonment had scarred over, leaving her more resilient. "You know," Benny said quietly, "a lot of guys would have let it eat them alive. The betrayal, the anger, would have lost themselves in the revenge. Didn't let it eat me." Callum's voice was steady. "Used to made things right, and now. Callum smiled as June stuck a difficult landing, her face glowing with achievement. "I don't need vengeance anymore. I already won." Above them, the Mississippi sky stretched endless and blue, unmarked by storms. June danced in the sunlight, her shadows growing longer as day faded to dusk. She was her father's daughter, strong, resilient, unbowed by the past. Callum watched her move through her routine, each step of victory over what had been lost. Some people might have chosen forgiveness, might have let the past fade into memory. But Callum Vance had chosen justice instead, had fought for what mattered most, and in the end, that was enough.